Hello and welcome to our first session of Catching Contentment Study based on the book Catching Contentment by Liv, who is joining us today. Hello, welcome Liv.
Hi Laura, this is great. I'm so glad to be doing this. We're using this study guide, which is Catching Contentment, and one of the reasons we want to look at this together really is that in these times we're facing at the moment, it's really difficult to find contentment. It's a word that can seem really far from a lot of us, isn't it? It's like it just feels like impossible some days because this stretches out in front of us. And I think especially for us, particularly the sort of chronically ill and disability community, it can be a really sort of tough word to get our head round. For me, I wrote this book out of my experience of living with chronic illness. So I've had lung disease all my life, and lots of infections, lots of pneumonia. And so because of that, I'm in like the shielded group at the moment. So it's really quite a difficult time for me because I sort of have to be shielded even within my home, right away from my family. So I'm really having to sort of almost re-look at all this stuff and think, how do I find peace, I suppose, in the middle of all of this stuff? When it's really hard, and also the fear that comes in from what if I do catch this COVID-19, because obviously my lungs are really messed up already. So
of course.
So it's really tough. And when I wrote this book, I wrote it out of this experience. I really didn't think that the word contentment could be almost like apply to me. I thought it was for people who were really kind of sorted in life. And perhaps people who were really healthy.
Exactly.
And people who had everything fixed. And I found that really it was almost like society around us was sort of telling us the story about what contentment was. And it's like that we can get contentment when we get like the latest thing, or our version of our lives, or it's kind of like you'll be content if you have the perfect relationship or the perfect food, and social
definitely
help, does it? With that social media, it's kind of like you look at everybody else's Instagram feed, it looks really perfect, and everybody's kind of like their lives look like this amazing ongoing amazing version of of events, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh well, I'm up here in the house, I'm isolated, I'm not experiencing this, and they're content and I'm not, and that's that's kind of where it came from.
That's great.
And I actually in the introduction to the book, I've kind of referred to some of my experiences of church over the years, really, how it felt to me like some Christian teaching was saying that we should all be kind of happy people, we should be shiny, we should be kind of displaying this whole kind of, hey, I'm fixed, and God is kind of
I think many people can relate to that.
And that's kind of been something that's built up through the years for me, and then that's left me in a place in some senses where I felt like I was letting God down, because I felt like, well, I'm not getting healed, so is that to do with my faith, like everyone keeps telling me it is,
Gosh,
that I'm not having enough faith, or and I'm not claiming this whole perfect life that some church teaching seems to. And thankfully, less and less of it now, actually. Thankfully, I see more and more, a lot of kind of more nuanced kind of now. But perhaps when I was
more about being authentic.
But perhaps when I was younger, it was a little bit more about, no, we've got to be fine at all times. We've got to say, you go to church and people say, how are you? You're like, I'm fine. And
yeah, I still find myself saying that today when I get asked, "Oh, how are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." "Oh, wait, but I'm not. But it's what I feel I should say."
yeah, totally. Yeah, no,
Definitely.
that's definitely what it feels like. And so I guess for me, you know, that kind of version of Christianity felt quite a narrow one, and it didn't,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't allow for the reality that many of us face in our lives, not just people who are ill, but just for people who are suffering in any way at all, or just where life gets difficult in any way. And so I really, really wanted to dig into what the Apostle Paul meant by contentment. He said, "I've learned being content," and to see if that kind of matched up with what I thought it was, or what society said it was. And so I guess the questions I'd like to kind of ask all of you guys today, and maybe, you know, you can respond in the comments. Do you agree? Do you think that society pushes a version of contentment, and what do you think that is? And also, have you come across any of that kind of teaching, any of that kind of ethos that says, you know, we can only become content, we can only have peace when God comes in and kind of fixes our lives up? Yeah, and I'd just love to get your thoughts on that, you guys, as well.
Yeah, brilliant. That'd be great to read through them.
Yeah, it would be.
So should we have a look at Paul's story now?
Yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at Philippians 4:4-13. And in this part, we read about Paul's story of contentment. And in verse 12, we learn that Paul has found the secret to contentment in every situation. Now, I don't think that's a small thing. In every situation, it's through the thick and thin he is finding contentment, and that's amazing. He wrote this when he was in a house in Rome, in house arrest, and being watched by armed guards, so that he couldn't leave. And I think there are so many similarities between that and what we're feeling now. We might not have armed guards at the door, but we're definitely being locked down and locked in and feeling very much alone. So this comes at a good time. He couldn't leave. If he did, he risked execution. And on top of that, he had to stay there, knowing his friends and co-workers were risking their own execution and being tortured and killed for their faith. But despite all that, he was still content. And I think that's just absolutely incredible, because even on the best days, there are times where I feel great and I'm like, yeah, I've got this, I'm feeling perfect, I've got this contentment down. And then sometimes you just have a complete crash and you're like, what on earth is going on? But so I've got another question for everyone there, and another one if you want to write in the comments below. So how do the verses 4-7, you can have a look at that in your own Bible, help us to know about finding rest from anxiety, which I think again is something that's very key at the moment with everyone feeling a bit unsure about what's going on. Anxiety is a big thing, and I think these verses can really help us to dig deeper into the solution for helping us get through that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and earlier on in his life, Paul wrote the book of Corinthians, and there's a group of letters sent out to the church of Corinth. And in 2 Corinthians 11:23-27, Paul tells us all of the things he had overcome as a Christian. So I'm going to read these out because I think this is quite an impressive list. He'd been hungry, he'd been thirsty, naked, cold, sleepless nights. He'd worked hard, he'd faced dangerous cities, deserts, seas, from Jews to Gentiles, travelled on long journeys, been robbed, beaten, whipped, stoned, and imprisoned, and even survived 3 shipwrecks. I'm like, what? I can't then look at my life and be like, oh, I can't do this contentment thing. Like, what? That's just ridiculous.
I think we'd be all really moaning and whinging if that happened to us.
I'd be a pile on the floor.
Yeah.
But no, he had it down. He got it. But yeah, there are many people today whose lives are exactly the same, who are facing danger every day because of their faith and are persecuted because of it all over the world. And so I think actually it's quite interesting seeing that a lot of those faith groups and their churches are growing much bigger and quicker than our groups are today. And so another question is, why do you think Christianity seems to grow more in the places of persecution than in the wealthier West? And I think that's that's quite a deep question, but something we need to self-reflect on, and something we need to look at the bigger picture of as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the question definitely, is how can Paul's experiences and assurances of how he learned contentment speak to us today? And again, there's so many situations that we can relate to there and work out how he managed to be content in all those circumstances.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots and lots of really great teaching there.
Yeah, and we just really love to hear your perspective on that, all of you guys.
Yeah,
what your experiences have been as well, and you know how it resonates with you, really, what Paul said and what his life was like.
definitely.
You know, he wasn't speaking from this kind of easy situation, and he certainly wasn't speaking from a kind of, oh, Jesus is come and fix me, was he?
Exactly, no, definitely not, no way.
You know, so I think somehow we've got it wrong.
Yeah,
So,
contentment isn't situational.
yeah, totally. Yeah. It's all circumstances, yeah. And so yeah, having looked at Paul's story of contentment, perhaps we could just spend a little while looking at your story of contentment. And for this, I'd just like to read a little passage that I wrote in the introduction to the book. It goes like this: after all, contentment is for people who have everything they need. The TV says so. It's not for people who have lost their dear husband or buried their child. It's for those who aren't fearful or tired or afraid. It's for those fortunate enough to be confident and productive and beautiful. For those who are not ill, not watching their life ebb away in waves of pain and exhaustion, wondering why me. Contentment is for people who have enough money, enough stuff, enough friends, enough acclaim. It's not for people stumbling under a heavy blanket of blackness, depression weaving its tendrils round their deepest soul, or for those who live in loneliness so intense it clamps itself around them, squeezing in until there's nothing left.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote that out of that kind of feeling that contentment could only really be for people who had a perfect life. And that, you know, those words came out of that sort of almost that darker place of thinking that, you know, it couldn't possibly be for me. But then when I was starting to dig into Paul's words about this and into the Bible altogether, this is what really sort of transformed my view, and this is what this study and this book is all about, a sort of transformation of the view, and a real kind of liberation actually of what it means to be content and to find contentment in Jesus. And so I guess I'd like to ask you guys in the comments, what does this quote that I just read out, how does that resonate with you? And another thing to think about is do you ever feel lesser if you're looking at your friends' social media feeds? Because, you know, like I was saying before, I think it's something that probably all of us kind of experience. And for me, it's been a lot like, especially when my kids were younger and in school holidays, it always felt like I was looking down Instagram and it was like one after the other of these families having these amazing days out, and, you know, loads of energy, making memories together. That was always the phrase. And there I sort of sat in my bed or on my sofa and my kids were like watching TV or on the computer. I was feeling the worst mom in the world. Like, I could be out there sort of giving them these amazing experiences. And so, you know, I felt lesser, you know, and I felt like I wasn't giving them a good enough life in a way, as well as, you know, being there for me. But you know what, when I asked my kids about this sort of later on, because they're older teenagers now, they both say really strongly that they never felt that they missed out, because what they had at home was love, and they always had they said that I was always there to listen to them and always there to just hear what they were going through, and that there's things more important than kind of being out making memories and having whole days out where, you know, I mean, they're great.
Definitely.
I love it when I can do that, although it's very rare that I can manage a whole day out. But yeah, and they were both kind of really, no, that's not what we felt. So
yeah, I'd say, speaking from that perspective of the child, I remember being raised and thinking like I was the luckiest child alive. And then when we look back, I used to spend my Saturdays drawing and watching cartoons and dancing, and I had a 10-piece lump, and like life was great. And you just don't realize at the time how amazing small things are, and actually just knowing your parents are with you and love you and whatever is so much bigger than actually trying to create this lifestyle that you think you need to achieve. That actually the outer world is trying to put off this fake look, but actually it's got nothing to do with the reality of the contentment you feel inside.
that's completely true. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts and experiences on that as well, about social media in general. Yeah, and another question is, are happiness and contentment the same thing? And I think that's a really interesting question, actually, isn't it? Because it depends what your definition of happiness is. And is happiness the same as contentment, or is contentment something that actually can go deeper? And is contentment something that can be there and present despite a really sad situation? Like, is it possible to be content when when we're facing mourning? Is it possible to be content when we're really sick and in pain? And is it possible to be content in the middle of COVID-19? So it'd be really interesting to get your thoughts on that, and just really any of your experiences about what it might mean for you, and perhaps even what you'd like to get out of this course.
I was going to say, I have a feeling that some of these questions might be answered later on. Am I right about that?
Well, explored anyway. Definitely.
We'll dig deeper into those anyway. So if you're not sure, then don't worry. You can keep coming back. We've got 5 more sessions. And so we can dig into those questions a bit more together as well, which is great.
If you want to explore this a little bit further during the week, perhaps, one suggestion is to have a go at mapping out a timeline of your life. Almost perhaps drawing it or using symbols on it, like emojis or something, to represent how contented or discontented you felt at various points. And then maybe use that to pray through your life, pray through the timeline, ask God perspective on how you felt and what you were really going through. So that's great. Give that a go.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I think that sums up for this week.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Amazing. So I hope you guys all enjoyed it. We do look forward to seeing your comments. So make sure you share your thoughts with us. And if you've got any prayer requests as well, throw them in there, because we'll be sure to be praying for you too. So I guess that's it. So thank you so much, Liz. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Thank you.
Dear Lord, as we begin this journey with you, this pursuit of peace, we ask that you speak to our hearts and draw us closer to you. May we discover the treasures to be found in the murkiest places and uncover the inexpressible joy of going deeper into you. Remind us of the hope that sparks life, streaming through the darkness, drawing us to glorious light. As we search for that which will put our souls at ease, help us to hold out our hands and to catch hold of contentment. Amen.